Welcome to our inaugural State of Brand event. My name is Andrea Martens, so we have to cope with my accent for the next 2 minutes. And I'm a partner of the Contenders.
Hello everybody, my name is Andrea Therkelsen. I am the Managing Director of the Lab in Sydney. And it's really a great pleasure to welcome everybody here tonight. I'm so thrilled that you all came along. It's amazing to have a room filled with such illustrious marketeers. And it's an important event for us tonight. We're here to discuss a series of events. Tonight is the first in a series of events we've called State of Brand. And Pedro and I and the Contenders in the Lab have really championed this whole idea of brand because we think that at the moment where we're at in 2018, coming into 2019, the challenges that are facing brand and marketing are bigger than they've ever been before. But at the same time, we still believe that successful brands always have been and always will be built on compelling and unique strategies that are based on insights from customers. So for those of you who aren't familiar with our businesses, we'll just do a very quick intro. I'm from the Lab, as I said. We're an insights and strategy agency, and we really champion and firmly believe in harnessing the world around us and the kind of cultural insights and forces to help brands keep one step ahead. It's really our DNA. We've got a team of really highly curious minds that are constantly decoding the stories and the narratives and the patterns around us so that we can help brands make better decisions and powerful brand strategies.
Thanks, Edward. And for those who are not familiar with the Contenders, we are a strategic brand agency founded in 2012 by Joe Rogers, who's going to be in the panel tonight. Our purpose is to help organizations to solve their business challenges through the lenses of brands. So it's all about branding. So we have a team of business-minded people, which is very important. I believe that brands serve a commercial purpose to any organization. And we are here to help organizations to win the battle and to win the hearts, the minds, and the wallets of our consumers. Our work is based on powerful consumer insights, strategic branding, and also its identity in the marketplace. But also, we're very pleased to really thank Hourigan International as our co-sponsor from this event. I personally have worked with them in the past. So since its inception in 2012, Hourigan International has specialized in the placement of creative leaders. I mean, there are many of us tonight, executives that understand the customer brand, data, innovation, and also digital, and are able to use new world levers to drive shareholder return. Hourigan are renowned for connecting top talent with organizations across multiple industries, and that desire to be different and thrive in a world of accelerating change.
Alright, sounds a bit Jova. Let's get on with it. So, just to give you a little bit of an idea of the chronology of tonight, we're going to kick off with a panel discussion with lead experts on the topic of key marketing challenges facing businesses in 2019. It's going to be led by Andrea Martens, who's the Managing Director of ADMA. Following the panel, I think as everybody knows, we have the inimitable Mark Ritson here to present some of his views about brand and marketing, and I feel that we're going to get some wonderful insights from that tonight, and maybe a little bit of controversy. Is that fair to say? Thank you, Mark. But thank you for coming, Mark. I really appreciate being here. After Mark's finished, we're going to have a little bit of an opportunity for some questions, a bit of a Q&A, and then we should be finished by about 7:30 with an opportunity to have some drinks, have a little bit of food, reflect on some of the conversations that we've had tonight. And we have to be out here by 8. So, without any further ado, let's get into the evening. And I'd love to introduce you to Andrea Martens, who's our moderator for the panel. Andrea has extensive marketing and general management experience, having worked for Unilever for over a decade, and more recently, as CMO of Jurek. Andrea has just recently taken on a new role as the Managing Director of ADMA, so welcome, Andrea.
Okay, so I'd love to welcome the panellists. First, Brent Smart, CMO of IAG, Australia's largest insurance company. So Brent leads the group-wide marketing efforts, from brand strategy right through to creative execution. Then I'd like to introduce Joe Rogers, so founder and CEO of the Contenders. And Anna Bryant, so head of strategy at the Lab. So a dedicated insight strategist, passionate about interplay between brands and people. Anna brings 20 years of experience across the US, UK, China and Australia. So we've got a really diverse group here tonight and looking for a bit of controversy as we talk around the key marketing challenges facing businesses in Australia. So I'm going to kick off with you, Brent. From your perspective, what are the key challenges facing marketing as we head into 2019?
I mean, loads. But for me, two main ones. I think the first one is short-termism. I think is a massive challenge, problem, issue for most marketers, and you know, we're dealing with executives and boards that look at quarterly results. I think that a lot of us, when I speak on behalf of the whole marketing union, have become a little obsessed with digital stuff that tends to have shorter, faster ROIs. So it can look quite impressive in the short term, but maybe the longer term it doesn't build a brand and it doesn't lead to long-term effectiveness. So I think yeah, short-termism. And honestly, I moved back to Australia about 18 months ago. I think it's more acute here than what I've seen in the States where I was working before. I do think a lot of the marketing I see here is very short-term in nature, very tactical, lacking strategy. So I think that's a big challenge for all of us as marketers, how we push against that sort of big tide of short-termism that is heading towards us. The second thing I think a lot of marketers have forgotten how to be marketers. I think they've become obsessed again with they want to be data scientists or digital transformers or chief experience officers or something, and they've kind of forgotten the really important and beautiful fundamentals of marketing, which are be really clear what your brand stands for, be really clear who you're talking to, make long-term strategic decisions for your brand, and I think that's the stuff that's timeless about marketing, and I think that's the stuff that it might not be as shiny and new and techy, but it's I think it's really important. And I just think a lot of marketers are it's almost like marketing's become a bit of a dirty word, I think, for a lot of marketers. And I think we've got to embrace it and celebrate it a little bit more.
So Anna.
I'm kind of going to echo what you said a bit, Brent. I think what I've experienced with my clients, at least for the last 5 or so years, is a real kind of pressure on time and freedom to make decisions and smart decisions. And that's because of short-term sales cycles, it's because of budgetary constraints, it's because of campaign deadlines, it's also because of global directives. I think there's not much that marketeers can do within that context. I think as a result of that, what I'm seeing is kind of a valuing of quick decisions rather than smart decisions, and a lack of thoughtfulness behind some of the decisions that are made, of no fault of their own, mind you, but just an inability to have the time to be able to think through decisions that they make that might affect commercial success.
So both of you have referred to the short-termism as something that's pushed upon them. So is your sense that that's actually from a CEO board level that that's coming from, or is this something that as marketers actually we're like magpies and always looking for the next shiny toy?
I think it's a bit of both, but I think it's a choice to make as a marketer, and I talk to a lot of frustrated marketers who seem to spend all their time trying to convince their board to do stuff, and I say, well, why the fuck do you work there?
Do they give a response? Or?
Mortgages.
Anna?
I can't comment on that. I don't know what that is. I do see a lot of panic internally what I'm thinking about here is about 10 years ago, I don't think I ever got an email coming into my inbox with quick and dirty research piece required. And on those projects, I do see a lot of panic about getting as much in as possible, asking as many questions as possible, and hoping for outcomes that are not suboptimal. And I think that there's a lot of panic, and people feel like, at least what I've sensed, that there's not as much, they don't have as much control over the process. So I'm not sure what happens at CEO level, but I do feel a lot of tension.
So Joe, with the Contenders, you obviously have the experience of obviously working closely with the marketeers, but also at a CEO level. So your perspective on the challenges and where the push is coming from in terms of the short-termism.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you're a CEO, you're sitting there every 3 months, you're reassessed. So I think we all have to understand that that's reality, and that is absolutely that is driving short-termism. But I think as marketers, or the marketing voice in that room, the issue that we actually face is we don't do a particularly good job of actually explaining the context in which we operate. And the big piece that I often notice is that the marketers that succeed are the ones who can actually stand in front of a board and stand in front of a CEO and ideally stand in front of a market and actually explain the value of a brand. And I think if you're unable to do that, I don't think as a marketer in a world where, I mean, it's become a tactical discipline. I think unless, there's a few shining stars, and Brent's certainly one of those, but Brent's not a classical marketer in terms of actually his experience. And I think getting back to being able to explain that where brand value actually comes from, and looking a finance director or a CEO in the face and being like, you know what, mate, half of the value that you're actually going out and selling to market is based off the intangible value of this organization. So we actually have to invest in that. We can't just harvest it. And I think, my biggest challenge that marketing faces at the moment is that we're in a harvesting mentality. We're not actually in an investing mentality, and we have to change the game.
Now you've all worked overseas. Brent, you referred to the contrast between US and Australia. What's your perspective in terms of what makes the US different, what makes the overseas markets different to what we're seeing here?
Well, what makes the States difference is it's so damn big, and you can't spend your way anymore in the States to engagement and awareness, that kind of stuff. Like, you actually have to do something great to get talked about, to get noticed, to cut through in that market. It's massive, And if you think about like Super Bowl and some of those massive media platforms they've got, like, you just have to do something great. So there's just more of I think understanding that we can't do invisible advertising. We can't buy our way to awareness anymore like we used to be able to. And I think also there's just a lot of, to be honest, really smart marketers who have grown up in places like Unilever, Procter, where they really pride themselves on being marketing professionals and being professional about how they go about marketing.
It's very true. I think the thing that we have to be really careful about here in Australia is that we don't end up as an outpost mentality. Because I think the thing that happens, I think, is that obviously when you look at kind of where the world's going, which is really stratifying. So it doesn't matter. The bases of power are becoming either they're in Silicon Valley or they're in New York or they're in London. And as a marketer, I think it's understanding that the world actually around us is actually polarizing. But our response mechanisms quite often are to try to play the middle ground. And I think that's the challenge, is that great work always has a point of view. And we're losing that. We're losing the courage to actually have that point of view.
So, from your perspective, how are companies, so obviously client side, how are companies managing these challenges?
Wow, I mean, look, I'm pretty fortunate that I have a CEO and an exec team that absolutely understand that we've got a really big legacy insurance business, but that's not throwing off enough profit or growth anymore, and that we need to start really thinking about what business are we in, what are the opportunities in other ecosystems, in other adjacent places, because we just can't grow enough anymore in insurance. We're market leader, massive market share. We have to look at other avenues for growth, and he absolutely understands that, champions that, and gets that the future of the company hinges on it. And ultimately, kind of to Joe's point, I think the way we're viewed at IAG, we don't want to be viewed as a sort of safe bet, blue chip dividend paying stock. We'd much rather be a growth stock, and the only way we're going to be a growth stock is if we grow. So growth is on the agenda big time in our place, and so I think that's why I went there. That's why I worked there. That's great. I think growth for me is the most important thing for any business. It's so different in a growing business to a not growing business. Everything becomes better and easier and happier if you're growing, and that's our biggest challenge. But at least we're sort of trying to gear the business towards delivering that, which is exciting.
Joe, a perspective on organisations, clients, in terms of how they're managing these things?
Not well. Fundamentally, Anna and I were talking about this earlier today, maybe comment in as well. But I think that the thing that's really, really interesting is that the structure of the organization is actually under threat. And Most people don't really think about it in that way, which is that really the trick to success in business today to grow is to actually vertically integrate. But most brand strategy is actually based on kind of building adjacency. And really, I think most organizations that get it are actually kind of going, we're trying to be one brand, Mark will talk about this, but kill as many brands as you possibly can. At least I hope you will, Mark. Maybe you won't. The thing that's really, really interesting about that thinking, though, is that most organizations still kind of will not make those tough decisions. And to get to growth, you have to stand for something, and you have to be ruthlessly efficient around the way that you actually allocate your resources. So, like my pet peeve with digital, for example, is it's a play toy, and it's not a play toy; it's a massive distraction. So I think it's about getting back to the fundamentals of actually what we do, as Brent was saying, as Anna has said as well, is that we have to get back to the inside.
Yeah, so my point of view on that, and one of the things I think is really, really important is for clients to remain customer-centric and put consumers at the heart of all decisions that they're making. And I think with this sort of quick decision-making sort of momentum amongst clients and amongst businesses, we've lost the kind of desire to really explore consumers as people and understand them on a very deeper level. And I think one of the things that tends to happen is a lot of clients don't have the money to do that. I think budgetary constraints and time comes into that. But I think what the other problem, just as an aside, another problem is that internally we have data segmentations and we have data frameworks and labels for consumers that actually don't have much richness behind them. And we tend to rely on those and not be open to evolving them and understanding people in more depth. And I think that's quite an easy sort of default position. But I think there is a role for looking at those, for evolving our understanding of consumers, really putting consumers at the heart of the business, understanding their needs and motivations, who they are as people. The benefit of doing that is that you won't make a poor research decision further down the track.
I know, actually, just to build, I kind of think you have to go one step further, customer-centric. I think you've got to be brand-centric.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is, when I think about my organisation, there are so many people with customer in their title. Customer distribution, customer development, customer futures, customer. Everyone's talking about customers. Every big organisation in Australia right now is mapping the customer journey, taking out the pain points. They're all doing the same thing with the same consultants. And so, I go, actually, if you're brand-centric, you start to make choices based on what your brand stands for, and you actually come up with a differentiated brand experience rather than just a customer-centric experience, which I think everyone's trying to do, right? Everyone's trying to be more customer-centric, and it's a great thing to do, but I think that brand lens is what makes more meaningful experiences and ones that are differentiated and ones that matter more, and I think that's the thing we've got to remember, because I promise you, every big corporate in Australia has got the same customer journey up on the wall, and they're all, they're all doing the same stuff, and so the brand becomes a differentiator, I think.
But that's again the framework and the label, right? The framework and the label, yeah, so I think that understanding them as people is probably gets to the heart of it, rather than putting them in a framework or a label.
It's quite ironic that at a time where we have so much data, we seem to have the least amount of insight, we have the least amount of customer centricity, and even less brand centricity. And actually, if we actually were able just to enable that data and people learn how to use it and really leverage it in the right way, we could get so much further as marketeers and be able to continue to be part of that debate that is so critical within the organisations to unlock the growth.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the biggest thing that brands are actually about is about exclusion, right? So a brand's actually about going, fuck that person, we don't want them, right? We stand for this and we stand for that. We were talking before about the Colin Kaepernick ad that Nike's put out as a great example. Now that is a massive FU to middle class values in America that are kind of in the Midwest, but Nike's done the math, and Nike understands that they actually need to stand for things, and they actually can't be just stuck in the middle, because then they become for everyone. And I think what customer journey mapping does is that, I've seen it, we've just done a large education project, and I was laughing, because I was like, you know what? That's the same as everyone has, right? So everyone has that map. Those pain points are all exactly the same, but you've got to have a point of view, and you've actually got to exclude some of them, even if you get to the basics of some are more important than others. But I think part of having a brand and prestige is that it kind of should be a little bit hard, right? If you're going to drive a Ferrari, it shouldn't be the easiest car in the world to drive, and we're forgetting that.
So, in terms of agencies, and agencies assisting in overcoming these challenges, Anna?
I think there's a role for agency and clients overcoming these challenges. I think one of the things I'm really interested in is agencies positioning themselves differently, not as moderators. I think a lot of, as a qualitative researcher myself, we've fallen into this trap of being moderators of focus groups, but actually we're thought leaders and we're consultants. And so I think one of the challenges, if we're in this kind of agile pace where time and freedom to make sort of, I guess, smart decisions is limited, how can you leverage researchers' smarts and thought leadership in a way other than running focus groups? Bring them into the boardroom, bring them into meetings, into brand planning sessions. You don't need to waste money on another piece of tactical research which might not give you the answer that you're looking for. We can play much more of a role other than moderators and researchers.
Yeah, I mean, a candid view is we have to stop being service providers. I think, you know, that agencies fundamentally, I mean, we are beholden to the clients that we actually, if that's a word, I'm not sure it is, someone correct me if it's not. We're stuck kind of in the middle at the moment where we need the money coming in, so you need the actual income that's actually coming through, but you actually lose objectivity if you actually kind of say yes all the time. So I think the big thing for agencies is really the good ones actually still have a bit of enough of a backbone to actually be able to say no, or actually be able to have a really robust dialogue with a client and challenge the client. You don't have to be an ass about it, but I think you do have to actually challenge the client.
Yeah.
I don't think that's quite right. I think maybe we need to think about this, or the brand's always stood for this. Are you really sure you want to reposition a 150-year-old heritage brand to vanilla? Do you really want to do that? Mm-hmm. And those are the types of questions that I think... Yes, on CGU perhaps.
100% agree with that, and we've all talked about it, but challenging the brief, getting away from the action standards and getting down to the real question, I think is a really important thing from a researcher's perspective. We'll be able to shape the right response rather than going with what is prescribed in the brief as the experts. So I think from that, in that respect, yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I've spent 20 years in agencies and now here I am, CMO. I completely agree with you. I mean, I pay an agency for an opinion. I think it's the most important thing an agency can have. And I think they need to, you know, the level of sort of objectivity and sitting outside our business and being able to sort of understand what's going on in culture and have a sort of different perspective than we have is really important. But the other thing is, I work for an insurance company, right? I'm never going to be able to hire the kind of creative talent that the monkeys can hire. And so, you know, all this in-housing that's going on, I've in-housed a bunch of stuff too, but ultimately I'm never going to be able to hire the kind of creative talent that the monkeys can. And I think that creative talent, if briefed the right way and given the right strategy, you know, they can do things that I'll never be able to do. And ultimately that's what I'm paying for. I'm paying for creativity and ideas. And I have not come across another partner or organisation that can do it like an agency. The consultants sure as hell can't. You know, like agencies still, their currency's ideas, and the good ones are particularly good at that. And that's what I pay my agencies for. And I think agencies, again, we talk a lot tonight about getting back to the basics. I think a lot of agencies have forgotten that. But if that's what you're about as an agency, if you're about the work and you're about your ideas, then I think the agency model isn't as dead as a lot of people want to make you think it is. The problem is there are a lot of average agencies doing average work that deserve to be dead.
Which you're describing as the holding company model.
I worked at Publicis for the 6 saddest years of my career.
But you're smart enough to leave.
If we talk around partnerships and partnerships between clients and agencies, what role do agencies have in terms of helping build the capability within the client team?
Well, I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, I built an in-house, for want of a better word, agency. But I did it with one of my agencies because, again, they're going to be able to hire the kind of talent, better talent I can. Also, it's awesome that talent's their problem, not mine. So basically, I've in-housed part of one of my agencies inside IG, and it's awesome, and they're great, and we treat them as our team. We include them in all our cultural stuff, rituals and stuff, but they're not employees of IG. And I think they can deliver a capability that's way higher than we could ourselves. So that's an awesome example of an agency growing our capability and being true partners with us, where this is a venture that we're on together, as opposed to trying to fight it, which a lot of agencies do. They want to fight it, do everything, and aren't open or confident enough to build that kind of model.
John?
Sure. So capability, I think, comes in lots of different ways. And the biggest challenge I think in marketing, you know, that's beyond the business challenges is actually it's the talent trend. And so I think as a agency partner, it's actually upholding standards. And I think a lot of my time now is actually spent with brand managers, so to speak, actually helping them remember that this is actually the way that brand's built. It should have codes. It should actually stand for something. It should be unique in the market. Because I think that the talent challenge that's actually there is real. And my view on the generation coming through is that they've had so much choice their whole life, so they just think there's another choice to make. Whereas actually, it's about really when you distill a brand and build a brand well, it's about what you don't do as much as what you do, and that's a skill gap that is huge. But I think agencies can really help build that capacity because it's about sifting through ideas, what's right, what's wrong. You can generate 20 really great ideas, but broadly only one's ever going to be right for that brand.
That requires a certain openness from the client as well, in terms of, you know, if I think of the best relationships I've had with agencies in the past and the best one in terms of what my team's been able to get from that has very much been where that outside in, that expertise, you can't afford to have in-house. But it brings a different point of view, it stretches the team, and at the end of the day, everyone's career develops as a result of it, and that's phenomenal.
And to me, I mean, I say I want to be my agency's favourite client, and that's not vanity, that is a commercial decision. Because I know from my 20 years working in agencies that, you know, if you can inspire an agency, if an agency knows that you're up for doing great work and they love you, basically, then when they're, you know, you pay them a fee and you'll get that number of hours. If you're an average client, you'll get that number of hours. But if they love you, then when they're walking the dog, when they're in the shower, when they're on the train, when they're meant to be on a romantic dinner with their, you know, significant other, they're thinking about your brand and your brief. And all those hours, you know how much all those extra hours cost you? Nothing. It's the smartest thing you can do in terms of an agency relationship.
So, one last question to finish us off. Anna, the single factor that is going to have the greatest impact on our industry over the next year?
Well, I'm from Insights, and I think it's the opportunity to have time to be more thoughtful about our decisions. And as an Insights practitioner, I guess that's about wanting to understand more about people, taking them out of frameworks, taking them out of customer journeys, out of segmentation, segments and personas, and being open to understanding them as people and understanding that they change. I think, I don't know if this answers the question, but I think the other thing is we need to get away from the traditional role of researchers speaking to consumers and come in with expertise from another vantage point. So culture, introducing culture, being on top of cultural trends, understanding expert opinions, bringing that to the table for clients as well, so that we can deeply understand people, their needs, their motivations, to help clients have commercial success.
Fantastic. Joe, single biggest factor for 2019?
Polarization. So to me,
I disagree.
Yeah, we can start tweeting and freaking out on each other. But so we live in quite a beautiful bubble here in Australia, but it's coming. And the polarization of society, the kind of this view between kind of two sides, is very, very difficult for brands because we're used to a world where we're actually able to broadly be mass, and we're actually going to have to pick sides of that. So I think it's interesting in terms of everything we actually sit. Culture doesn't have the same resonance. We all kind of live inside our own little bubble, whether we realize it or not, but everything's in an echo chamber now. And I think for marketers, we've got to be really, really careful about not drinking our own Kool-Aid inside our own echo chamber.
Brent?
Creativity. I think there's never been more content in the world that gets crazier and crazier every day, every hour. Most of it's invisible, most of it you don't see, care about, connect with. I still think the biggest challenge for every marketer is how do you cut through and connect and get people to care. But then I think it's not just about comms, it's how do I bring creativity to the customer experience? How do I bring creativity to pricing? How do I bring creativity to the whole marketing mix and come in a really different way, in a really surprising way, in a way that will make people notice and make people talk about it and make people care. Your starting point has to be no one gives a fuck about marketing. They just don't. Like, just talk to your mum. You know, like, they don't care about marketing. So if that's your start point, you go, well, okay, so how can I make them care? And if you're going to work in insurance, It's like a double landing here, right? So I just think, how can we bring creativity to everything we do so that it's worthy of people's time and worthy of people's conversations? And I think too much marketing I see has no respect for either thing.
So thank you very, very much to all of you. And I will now hand over to Mark.
So on to the second half of the billing. Thank you, Tim. And I'll try and pick up on some of those comments that were delivered in that first half of the session, and then we'll have some drinks. So my topic tonight, the end of absolutes in brand thinking, and then I realised that was kind of a bit of a contradiction in terms, because I'm sort of at the end of absolutes. So, okay, a few, but let's try and cut them back a bit. Okay, I'm going to speak for moderation and for a little bit more of contextual thinking, as you'll see. Too often I think that we've developed marketing into this giant, competitive, contradictory, bipolar, aggressive, binary system. And there is a place for that, but I think it's becoming kind of out of control. And I think for 2019, as you think about your brand plans, I'm going to try and recommend that we don't go down that path. And what I've chosen this evening are 4 areas where I feel that A, we've become too binary, and suggest kind of a path C, which is a bit of both, which is practical for brands going forward. So to give you an example, so I'm quite traditional in the sense that I'm a marketing professor and stuff, so I do follow the Cotlerian approach to marketing, and as I get surprisingly older each year, I find myself to become more and more traditional, I guess, in that approach. So many of you were trained this way, some of you weren't, but for many of us, we were taught, and then we went out and applied it, and it does work. It's not just dogma. That you would find a decent segmentation of the market. It doesn't have to be perfect, but a decent segmentation. You would make some choices about who you would and wouldn't go after. And then you would position your brand to those specific segments. And that was kind of a big part of marketing, it was the Holy Trinity. But then, as many of you will know, we kept bumping into people like this. So this is Bruce McCall. He's retired now, but he was a very famous marketer, a very famous marketing company. And McCall sort of went out in a blaze of glory 2 years ago. I forget which conference he's at, but he said, look, I'm not a great believer in targeting. Our target is about 7 billion people sitting on this planet, and our task is to reach as many of them as we can, to get them to notice us, remember us, to nudge them, and hopefully get them to buy us once more this year. And so this was kind of obviously not either segmentation or targeting or positioning. It was just mass marketing that we were taught didn't work, and you didn't want to do it. And it was Bruce McCall, it was Mars. He sort of went, well, maybe he's bonkers, maybe he's lost it and whatever. But then Mark Pritchard turned up saying pretty much the same thing. And again, if you're a traditionalist, you kind of bow down to the Church of Procter & Gamble because they invented brand management. I mean, literally, right? So Pritchard then came out and said at the ADMA last year in Miami, we've targeted too much and we've went too narrow, and now we're looking at what is the best way to get the most reach but also the right precision. So here's the most powerful marketer in the world saying we targeted a bit too much. And so you get a sense, don't you, of this kind of thing, which is, we're meant to be into targeting specific segments, and we were trained to do that, but in reality, we're encountering more and more mass marketing. Now, to be fair, it isn't mass marketing. Its official name is sophisticated mass marketing. Bow tie, but it's fucking mass marketing is what it is, right? And of course, the reason why they're all doing mass marketing, both Bruce and Mark, is because of Professor Byron Sharp, the Dark Lord of Penetration. You've all bought the book, none of you have read it, but you've all bought it. You got to page 6 and you went, for fuck's sake. What does it say at the end? You know? What it says at the end is Professor Sharp is right. But in all seriousness, you know, Professor Sharp and Ehrenberg Bass, you know, it has been until I think next year, it is the most famous book on marketing in the last 25 years. It will be replaced, as we'll see later. Not by anything I've written on books. We'll get to that. But, you know, what Ehrenberg Bass proposed is sophisticated mass marketing, which doesn't mean targeting anyone, nor does it mean treating everyone the same. It means understanding the heterogeneity in your market, but then catering for only the differences that matter. So there was a real push by Ehrenberg Bass, which uniquely had an influence on most marketers, even here in Australia, that we would broaden out the aperture and go after everyone. And it made targeting a very, very confusing topic for most of us. Now, to be fair, first of all, to Professor Sharp, I think the key point in his definition is catering for the differences that matter. Most of you, not all of you, but most of you have segmentations that don't actually work, yeah? That don't make any difference. And the highlight for me this year, the most stupid fucking thing I've seen this year, and I know there's a couple of people from Deloitte here, so this is your moment, Deloitte, was when Deloitte came up with this, which is the new noun, malexial, okay? I don't make this up, man. I read this and I go, that can't be true. And then I spend a day looking at it, right? So the malexial is, according to Deloitte, the mobile consumption behaviors of Generation X, because they now closely mirror those of Generation Z, and also millennials. And we're calling this combined group the malexials. Now, Deloitte, you could have just called them people. It's like everyone. Can you see it? You see how it's everyone? Talk to me afterwards wherever you are. If you buy me a beer, I'll take you through the math. But to be fair to Byron and his team, I mean, they are partly critiquing stupid segmentation, right, which is on display here. But it has made targeting very hard for you and for me and for everyone else, because originally we had mass marketing and it was bad, and I was very much part of the traditional troop that thought that targeting was good. And I'm by no means the more extreme. Right? If you look at what Facebook can do, their micro-targeting capabilities go way beyond the basic SDP stuff that I would propose. And yet here was Professor Sharp and Ehrenberg Bass really putting a completely different pull on the market back towards mass marketing. And so exactly a year ago, Professor Sharp and myself had a big debate in London. So every year we have a big thing called the Festival of Marketing, which is like Tim's here, like the Umbrella 360 but much bigger. And that's for you, Tim. And so we had a big debate at the end of the Festival of Marketing in London, and we debated for 20 minutes each, and then in a sort of, you know, Greco-Roman style struggle, the story. And it was a proper, like, full-on thing. You know, like, I signed up to it, and then there was like 5,000 people. It was a big thing, you know. And because I guess my topic is, you know, about trying to avoid these binary things, I don't want to go into who won the debate and what the outcome was. You know, I debated targeting and he debated mass marketing. Don't want to go into that. It's not appropriate. But we had the debate, and it's not about binary opposites, it's about coming together. But I smashed it. I mean, it's more than that. It's not appropriate to say. My point is, we had this big debate, and egos aside, and there's certainly some fair-sized ones on that stage that day. Who's right? Me continuing to want to do targeting, Professor Sharp wanting to do mass, and the answer I'm now, a year later, I'm pretty clear on, and it's more seriously a very important answer for you. I think these two boys are right. And so I think our little juvenile discussion and debate is answered by these two. And it changes, if you're smart, which most of you are, it changes how you do brand planning from now on, yeah? And so Peter, Phil, Lesman, they were old when I was quite young, right? So they're quite old now, right? They're both old account planners. And their real skill has been, they've been writing these books that no one's read for a good 15 years about effectiveness, yeah? Because they're not sexy and, I mean, look at the fucking cover, you know? They're not creative, to put it that way, right? But the thing about Peter and Les is they kind of set up the IPA Effectiveness Awards about nearly 3 decades ago. And so they've looked at all the successful campaigns in the UK pretty much for 30 years, yeah? And that's a great database of information, not just about great creative, which is super important, but also about which campaigns work and which ones don't. And so over a long period of time, and thousands of case studies, Peter and Les have worked out what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's knowledge that none of us have, that we should all steal from them. And so this is the famous chart. You have, if you're a good reader and scholar of marketing and brand, you will have seen this. If you haven't, you can pretend you have later on, right? But just remember it, because you will see it, I would guess, about 8 times next year at conferences, yeah? So I want to be your first, if you haven't seen it yet. And you might even want to pretend that I invented this, right? Which I didn't, but sort of, in a kind of showed it to you first kind of way, yeah? So, what Field and Burnett have done is looked at thousands of case studies at the uplift of sales over time. And then they've looked at it, you know, over an end time period. And what they observe is a vacillating pattern. Now, there's no numbers on this is just a symbolic chart, but it captures a much bigger meta-analysis of what's been going on. So what they observe, first of all, is short-term sales activation. Okay, now that doesn't mean sales promotion. Let's make that clear. That's a mistake already happening in various marketing circles. You've got someone who's 27 in your company who gives you efficiency data every day, okay? And I like it, they're very useful, very bright young people, they do this. Right? With your, that you go, how's the campaign going? And they go, and they come back and they go, your CPM, CTR is, you know, 0.7, right? And the point is that changes by the hour, okay? That's what they're talking about here. Short-term, instantaneous efficiency response curves, yeah? Which, as you can see from our red line, do work. They do give you a boost, but the minute you take your foot off the pedal, the boost disappears back to zero, boost, 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 and on we go. They've also observed brand building taking place within some of these submissions as well. And obviously what you see with brand building is a longer term cumulative improvement in sales increase. Now, the point they make is if you live in a 6, or anyone, in my book, a sub 12-month window, it becomes apparent that you wouldn't spend too much money brand building, you'd have a token effort. What you'd really do is get Facebook in, you'd get your search optimization optimized, you'd have a couple, maybe a dozen really smart young people in housing and running good programmatic, and you'd ride that red tide kind of neutrally for the rest of your time and tenure as a brand manager or CMO. And the interesting point is if you live in that sub 12-month world, if you don't have a longer than 12-month vision, that makes perfect practical sense because the brand building mission isn't going to pay you back like the short-term stuff is. But once you take that longer-term view, what becomes readily apparent is without brand and without a longer-term, multi-year perspective, you're really not going to win. Now, again, another misnomer about this work. It doesn't mean don't do short term. You need the kids going, you want them, yeah? They're paying the rent and they're doing a good job. But that's not a problem for everyone in this fucking room, man. We're well past 50% on digital, right? The problem is the vast majority of Australian brands don't have any brand strategy. That's the problem. I mean, we pick people that do, right, for our panel, but the vast majority don't believe in the blue line. And so that's the point, the interaction between the long of it and the short of it. The analogy I would use, which is less cool than Field and Burnett's, is your brand is a tree. You need to water the tree and you need to pick the fruit. But what's been happening in Australia, like everywhere else, and I agree, I think it's more pronounced here than most other places, is the amount of watering is decreasing dramatically, but the amount of fruit picking is increasing exponentially. Except there aren't as many fruit now because the tree is really starting to struggle. Now, the balance that Field and Binet recommend, so they've looked at all this shit, right? And what they tell you is, what's the balance between these two things? The balance is the famous 60-40 rule. So if you want to bullshit everyone later and pretend you've read the book, all you got to say is 60-40. Is it really 60-40? Is it? What do you think? Is it 60-40 or not? That infers you've read it, right? That's like saying Durgelet after the How Brands Grow. Because, oh, he knows what Durgelet, right? The 60-40 rule. Now, what their latest work shows is that's a very broad average. If your business is more low involvement, fast moving, more emotional, basically a low involvement good for the most part, you might want to slide that back down to a longer term investment that's sub 50%. But if you're in the higher involvement, more rational, occasional decision making, it's likely to be significantly more than 70%. It could be as high as 80 or even 85%, based on their analysis of these different categories. And again, my point to you is, I don't know that many brands that really even pass 50% on long-term, multi-year brand building investments in Australia. There's a few, but there aren't as many as there should be, because most of them have been convinced to move their money to shorter-term activation. Not a mistake, not the wrong thing, but too much of that fruit picking is actually going to become suboptimal. And obviously, as the brand gets more involving, we should be spending more on brand building. So here's my key point, which even Field and Binet are not making at the moment, but I think they'll make it eventually, and it's very operational. Their research also reveals, over the last 10 years, that if you look at what works best for the short-term stuff, you could target your existing customers, non-customers, or both. There is clear evidence that what you want to do is go after customer segments with your short-term activation. Okay? It makes sense, it gives you the best return. I was right. Sort of. However, when it comes to brand building, when it comes to the emotional longer-term stuff, you want to go after everyone. And Byron was right. You want maximal reach. You don't want any targeting at all. You want to drop a nuclear explosion on the whole market, which runs against our instincts. Now, you'll find some brands I know quite well that sort of fall between the two. So you don't win either. You need a bit here and a bit there, and kind of have to cover both with different strategies. So, the reality is we were both sort of right in our own particular way. I was 40% right on average. You want shorter-term activation, more granular segments, more targeted comms, more product-based appeals. It should probably be more digital and led by digital, because nothing has targeting like digital comms. Nothing can touch it for that, in that respect. And this is probably an annual entrepreneurial money-making venture. This is what will make you your short-term money and enable you then to do what Byron proposes, which is longer-term brand building. Mass marketing, targeting everyone in the category, brand-based and emotional. It's going to be TV and out-of-home led for most segments, not all, but for most segments, because of the untouchable reach that TV and out-of-home give you. I'm not going to go into the TV being dead bullshit. You have to fucking read that for yourself. It's still cock. TV has unquestionable reach in this country and remains the predominant source of video. Okay? It does. I'm not going to go into it again. Bored with it, you should be bored with it. It's just true. Okay? And this is a multi-year strategy. What that means is you have to have a 12-month plan. Anything more than that is horseshit. But it's multiple 12-month journeys leading to a long-term destination. Next one. Purpose and distinctive. So there's an interesting dynamic right now in the world of brand building. On the one end, so I was on a plane about a month ago. I've been traveling a lot. And I read the usual cock on LinkedIn, right? So you go through your LinkedIn and you're like, oh, here we fucking go. So the brand manager is dead, long live the brand activist. It's the brand activist today, right? We're getting rid of brand managers after 80 years, and we should call them all brand activists. Picture of people holding fucking signs, blah, 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 right? And you read it and you go, right, which numpty's written this, right? Fucking here we go, some fucking wanker from there. And this one was written by, wait for it, the president of Unilever. The head of Europe for Unilever, Hanneke Faber. Yeah? Now that's a triple blow. First of all, because she's Unilever, right? Which is one of our great branding companies. Second, because she's the fucking president of it, not some numpty in the PR department. She's in charge of it. And third, by my best calculation on LinkedIn, about 2.5 hours later, she has 2,500 brand managers reporting to her. Yeah? They must have felt good the next day. Right? Now what's going on here? This is the horseshit that we call brand purpose. A load of wank from marketers who don't want to be fucking marketers. Yeah? Who think their brand is a big thing rather than a little thing. Yeah? Cleaning the toilets of Australia, one bowl at a time. Yeah? We lost the fucking plot because we're embarrassed about just good old-fashioned customer-based benefits. Now, I think about 2% of brands that claim a purpose are genuinely purposeful. There are some. They're not the ones that you normally see advertising their purpose. They're proper purposeful brands. Yes, we can point to Ben & Jerry and Patagonia and very few others. The rest are mixing up employer brand, what brings people to work every day, and why someone cleans their toilet with your product versus the competition. They are overstating the role of brand. Your brand is a little thing. Just because you work on it every day, it's fucking pointless to most people. Even your loyal customers who aren't really loyal, it's a little thing. That's not pessimism, that's realism, and it helps you do a better job with managing your brand. And if you look at the data, sure, if you say to a customer, would you prefer a brand that has a strong purpose? Yes, I would. Would you pay 7 cents more for it? Definitely fucking not, right? Failure of the competitors see. They're all the same. Wake up and smell the pointlessness of purpose. Making today great. Isn't today amazing? Fantastic tomorrows. Happy today. There's no differentiation left in anything. They're all the same. And finally, the companies producing them can't actually deliver on the promise. You know, Umbrella 360 was great this year, right? But when they presented the Fearless Girl, and everybody kind of accepted that the company behind Fearless Girl, State Street, it wasn't a problem that they were underpaying women versus men in their own company. It was like, what are you talking about? They're a fucking sexist company. Yes, they've got a nice statue, congratulations. They don't pay women as much as men, or people of colour. Isn't that kind of like an issue? Yeah, no, it's a good purpose, it's a lovely statue, right? We have to come back to the point of marketing. If you don't deliver on the promise, it's shit positioning, whatever you call it. And I think it's driven by marketers who fundamentally are ashamed to make a profit, ashamed to take pride in making a good product or service. I work for money, I don't know about you. I don't have as much money as Halleck a favour over there. I work to pay off my mortgage and put my kids through school. Yeah, I'm not ashamed of that. I do other things in my private life. When I go to work, you know what I like to do? Make fuckloads of money. And there's nothing wrong with that. And great products and really cool brands. And there's nothing wrong with that. She closed her LinkedIn post with, "My father would be proud of her claim." And it's like, that's great. But wouldn't he have been proud if he'd been the president of Unilever? What's so fucking wrong with that? When did we get ashamed to be marketers? Now, on the other side, so I've got this giant truckload of wank, yeah, brand purpose, right, on one side, which is what it is, come on. On the other side, I've got this, right? So this again is the work of Aaron Burke-Bass. Now, first of all, distinctive assets are a huge thing. I call them codes, some people call them codes, other people call them distinctive assets. The consumer behavior literature has for decades focused on customer perceptions of brands as the main reason why one brand is chosen over others. This emphasis seems misplaced. If buyers of a brand do not think their brand is different or unique, then presumably this is not the reason why they buy it. There is a strong undercurrent in the distinctive assets literature that says there's only distinctiveness and there's no more differentiation. Now, there's no more differentiation if you have an undergraduate definition of it from 1975, where you have unique attributes that no one else has. But no one believes that that was what we meant by differentiation in the first place. There's no reason we can't be distinctive, which is a huge contribution to the literature. I think it's fantastic, but also continue to do differentiation. This is a polar binary discussion that we don't need to have. You can have both. I spent 14.5 painful years in Paris working for LVMH. We have DNA, differentiation, and codes, distinctive assets. It seemed to work fine for us for a decade and a half. You can have both. Differentiation is possible. We need brand meaning. You can be more of something than others. Doesn't mean you have a unique asset, it just means you stand for it more than others. There are so many different meanings a brand can stand for that the permutations of 2 or 3 give you a form of weak differentiation. I've seen it firsthand, and it's clear from the data and the tracking I see. You want salience, you want distinctive assets, but you also want meaning. And you want meaning because, let's be very clear, without meaning, brands don't exist. They're just commodities. And there's a strong push against differentiation right now, which is distasteful. So, somewhere in the middle is the answer, okay? Our brands are not just red, round things, yeah? Distinctive assets. But they're also, I think, not as much as freedom from tyranny, yeah? There's a middle ground there somewhere that we can find, that we used to find much more easily in the noughties, which is some form of symbolic meaning, but not trying to save the world. What I've learned on my journeys on positioning is very simple. I think you can throw away almost all the positioning materials most brands produce. At the end of the day, when companies do positioning, they forget the whole point. Positioning is not a means in itself. It's become books and presentations and wank. All positioning is the intended brand image. Yeah? Think about your customer walking down George Street. Imagine you have 3 brain cells. You probably don't have that. It's not that important to them. Yeah? But let's give you 3 brain cells. What do you want? You want to exist and have salience? What are the 2 or 3 things you want them to think when they think about your brand? Write them down. That's your positioning. All the triangles in keyhole wank, just getting in the way. Just getting in the way. Marketers grew it like moss, right, around a dead tree. Yeah? What do you want your brand to stand for? Does it stand for that or not? It's really much harder to find 3 or 4 words from a brand that have come up with 28 inside a concentric circle. Yeah? Okay, next one. 2 more to go. Ah, agility, agility, agility. Or very, very long-term plan. So, first of all, marketers need agility like a fucking hole in their head, okay? They're already dancing around, falling over like a drunken sailor, yeah? Agility means you don't know what you're doing, yeah? You need a plan, and you need to stick to the fucking plan, yeah? Not agility. We all know of a big 4 bank that's currently destroying itself with a potent combination of digital multiplied by agility. Watch how that works out for them over the next 12 months, is my prediction. At the same time, if you have more than a 1-year plan for a brand, it descends into dumb extrapolation. I've seen firsthand, I've worked with clients, I've done it myself. We build a 3-year plan. Here's how you build a 3-year plan. You spend a long time on 2019, and then you extrapolate the numbers into 20 and 21. It should feel wrong to you, yeah? We don't know what the fuck's going to happen 12 months on from now, right? So my point to you is the sweet spot, and I come back to this having seen, I'm Yoda, right? I've done 1,000 brand plans. I've launched them, I've seen them fail and succeed now, right? I'm not smart, but I've seen 1,000 fucking winters. The point I would make to you is, a 12-month brand plan is a beautiful thing, yeah? We don't need any fucking agility. It just messes things up. What we need to do is stick to the 12-month brand plan. There's a little bit of tactical stuff clearly around the edges, but stick to the plan. It's what's needed more than anything else. Second point is, it's based on the annual year of the company, yeah? The first question I have with a client before I work with them is, what's your financial year? Because that's the disco that we have to dance within, yeah? And the financial year is always fucking arbitrarily different, random months appear, right? But the point is, work back. Let's say we're like the weird bankers and we start on October the 1st, okay? And that's the start of their financial year. Why? Nobody knows. October 1st, okay? What does that tell you? The finance gang upstairs are going to put their budgets together around about the end of August. What does that mean for marketers? It means you've got to get your shit together and present a plan to the finance gang before they give you the numbers. Because if you take their fucking numbers and they tell you your marketing budget, you're fucking pointless. Pointless. That's what zero-based budgeting means. It means you've taken your money without any strategy from a finance person that has no marketing background, who has extrapolated your sales figures, who already knows what your 2019 sales number is going to be before you even start work. That's how fucking pointless you are, right? He's already got the number. He's already told the CEO, and they've already put it in their annual plan. You haven't even started thinking yet. Next, he's taken an advertising to sales ratio, which is 2 or 3 or 9 or 4%, straight out of his ass, because it's a completely fucking arbitrary number, and he's applied to that bullshit number he's already booked to give you your marketing budget. That's how crap we are in marketing. We take the shaft every year. Yeah? We take the finance shaft. That's 95% of all Australian marketing budgets, right there. That's how we get it. If I explain it to a child, they would go, that doesn't make any sense. Because it doesn't make any sense. But you know what? Based on most marketing departments, you'd go with the CFO. Yeah? You'd go with the CFO. So, we want a brand plan, working backwards. So if you can get ahead of the finance teams, and you can tell the finance teams, I want this amount and I'll return that amount, you are a queen or king among the average, yeah? Because you've gone to finance and said, this is a proper plan. A good brand plan doesn't end with thank you very much, it ends with, give me this and I'll give you that. Now we can't do that in 95% of Australian companies because our brand plans aren't good enough. They aren't calculatable because they're not built on proper data. That's a bigger problem for us. But make note that we must work from the financial planning. People keep saying we need more CMOs. We don't. Have you seen some of them? Yeah? They're not up to it. We pick the ones that are. There's a whole army of them that aren't. Yeah? I've seen the effect on boards when they get up there, and the reaction of the board is literally, who the fuck is that? Right? They have no idea what's going on. Right? 80% of CEOs in a recent survey said they don't trust their CMO, right? People keep saying to me, I go to these conferences and no one said it here, thanks be to God, but we need to avoid these quarterly reporting cycles. No, we can't. What are you talking about? We're not in charge of the rhythm. We're not the DJ. We're the small child in the corner, right? The quarterly reporting cycle is the cycle of business. Get with the fucking music, yeah? That music is our pace. Stop saying you name things at marketing conferences. Finally, the average CMO tenure is 2 years. That's because they're crap. The good ones seem to stay a lot longer than that. Stop fucking using that cliche, right? We need to be able to talk to the boardroom in a way that's sensible and business and evidence-based and isn't full of nonsense. And we will get a lot of respect. So, I guess what I'm saying to you guys is without a zero-based budget, I don't think you should be left in charge of your own investments. If your brand plan is good enough, zero-based budgeting is the key because it enables you to ask for what you need and promises a return. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but it means you're actually speaking the language of the boardroom. And there's something else about a zero-based budget. If you've got it, it means your brand plan is good enough to put numbers on. That's why Unilever, P&G, Coca-Cola, Westpac are the only companies that have it. Yeah? We need better brand plans so we can zero base and we can get our own budgets and behave accordingly. Last one, and I'll finish. Let's do it again one more time. Traditional versus digital. Yeah? I'm looking increasingly right. Doesn't mean I'm right, but I think it's coming my way. You ready? So, there's a real danger when we do the long and the short of it that we look at a bunch of short-term tools that are really good for doing the short-term activation, and there's a bunch of tools that are really good for long-term activation. Now that's kind of true, but I wouldn't go there. Because again, it gets us into that polar binary system. You know, and the bigger one that's been haunting us for 10 years is digital versus traditional, yeah? Digital versus traditional. Look at the campaigns of the year. We've already mentioned the couple of these. So, UK campaign of the year. I'm going to predict it now, even though we've got another month and a bit to go. I'll bet you the campaign of the year in the UK is going to go to KFC. Okay? So as you may have followed it, KFC had a small strategic problem earlier in the year. They got a new distribution partner that could not deliver chickens. Right? It's a bijou strategic problem for KFC, who then had about 4.5 weeks without any chickens in any of their KFCs. So cue this massive news story, brand tracking goes through the floor, lots of interviews with fat poms saying they're missing their chicken, even though they clearly don't need any more fried chicken. And then the CMO, who's very, very good, she came up with a very nice plan, which is this. She took out full-page print ads in all the British newspapers going basically fuck. Yeah? Fuck. We haven't got any chicken, we're fucked, okay? It's basically the text, right? And overnight, sentiment changed, people said, this is fantastic. You know, literally she turned it around. I think she'll sell more chicken this year, even with that 4-week black spot, because of the positive PR. Now, you could read this as being newspaper advertising is back, it's the future, it's not that thing. Let people Google it. Newspaper advertising is back, it's the future, etc., etc. That's not the point. Only about 12% of the British population saw this ad. The rest of them saw it when it bounced around social media and everything else as a result of the print ads. And here, we glimpse something we have forgotten. The authority, newsworthiness of print ads with the interaction, with the immediacy, and with the reach of social media. A synergy created a success. US campaign of the year, Joe's already mentioned it, will be the Kaepernick campaign. It started with outdoor, it moved to a 2-minute TVC, it then sparked enormous amounts of social media discussion, both pro and con, and finally was covered extensively by the media. It's looking at you right in the face. Which of these tools was the most important in generating this incredible impact for Nike? And the answer is, of course, all of them. Every year, if you look at the effectiveness awards in Australia, for the very best campaigns we produce, we see the same thing here. If you look at all the submissions, around 250, the average good campaign uses just over 4 channels, 4 different media types. The winners are close to 6. And they're spread across about 4 channels for the bronze, about 6 for silver, and about 7 for gold. The completely obvious answer to the question, do you want digital video, do you want TV, was always yes and yes. You want both, and you can see why, because the more channels you use, the more impact you're going to have. We forgot this around about 10 years ago when we started getting all tribal and battly about different media. The secret formula of all marketing comms comes down to multiplicity. A times B will always be greater than 2A or 2B. Or, trying it out, you might look at TV with a little bit of digital video will always be greater than just running TV, or just running digital video. And you can try it with anything. You can throw search in there, it's going to work. Multiplicity, interaction, media neutrality, agnosticism, synergy. The words we forgot when we started saying that mine was bigger than yours. Here's my favorite chart of all time. I show it all the time now because I'm just in love with it. Analytic Partners, massive operation. They have an office here, but they're based out of the US. Analysed 3,200 campaigns. Yeah, that's a big meta-analysis. They found that about 29% of those campaigns use one platform. So that could be Google search, it could be radio, it could be TV, it could be Facebook, whatever. Around about the same number use 2 platforms. But when you add 2 platforms and you control for investment levels, you get a plus 19% ROI versus a campaign with just 1 platform. You want 2 because it gives you more, irrespective of what the 2 are. Multiplicity. If you add 3, you get a 20